Let's see the next topic, mass energy relation. A very interesting one and the very famous equation too, which are very well known, E equal to mc square. So according to the Newton's second law, can we write down that F equal to dp by dt? That's what, right? Rate of change of momentum is nothing but force acting on the body. So F equal to d by dt, and of course momentum is mv, which I can write it as differentiate this equation with respect to time, m into dv by dt plus v into dm by dt. That's it, right? UV formula, UV rule. Now this force, whatever you are actually considering, will displace a body by distance x. So whenever the body is displacing, there will be a change in the kinetic energy, right? And I am calling, which will be the work done, actually I should call it as, and that work done will appear as the kinetic energy, obviously. I am calling that small amount is nothing but dk equal to f dx. Can I write down? For this force and for a small displacement, whatever the work done will be stored as that kinetic energy. So m into dv by dt plus dx, dv by dt into dx plus v into dm by dt into dx. Just nothing, I am multiplying this entire force with dx. That's what here. Look here, can I write it as dk equal to m into dx by dt into dv. Okay, just rearranging, plus v into dx by dt into dm, making a dx by dt as a common for both. And what we call the dx by dt for displacement dx and in a small time interval, velocity, right? So now can I write that as dk equal to m into dx by dt is v, mv dv, plus v into dx by dt is already v, so v square, v into v square dm. Can I keep this aside and let's call equation 1. And now according to the Einstein's relation of a relativistic mass, which is nothing but a rest mass, we are already very familiar with this, right? Many times you have seen this equation from the theory of relativity. So we can write it as m equal to m naught by square root of 1 minus v square by c square. M naught is rest mass of the body. Okay. Now square this and multiply. What we can get? It will be nothing but m square c square minus m square v square equal to m naught square c square. Remember, this is nothing new. From the previous equation only, we are actually squaring and then multiplying this. So let me write this equation here so that it will be clear for you once. It is m equal to m naught by square root of 1 minus v square by c square. So I can take out c square minus v square by c square will be c. So m naught c by square root of, so m square into 1 minus v c square minus v square. So m square c square minus m square v square equal to m naught square c square. So that's clear, right? This equation I have squared and multiplied. Now differentiate this equation, this entire equation. So as anyway m naught and c are constant, since because m naught is nothing but the rest mass and velocity, speed of light will be always a constant value. So now differentiate that equation, what we can get? C square into 2m dm, that's it, right? C square is constant, so 2m dm minus m square into 2v dv minus v square into 2m dm minus of, right? So that's why we got the third term to be the negative. So are we clear with this? Differentiate this, will be equal to 0. On the right hand side we have m naught c, which both are the constant. So m naught is constant, c constant, constant derivative 0. Now let's see how we can add all this. C square dm minus mv dv minus v square dm equal to 0. Can I write down? C square dm minus mv dv, so which is nothing but 2m I have taken common, that's it. Okay. C square dm equal to mv dv plus v square dm, just rearranging. Let's call this equation 2. Look here, have you seen this mv dv plus v square dm anywhere? Earlier we got in the previous also the same. Look here in the previous, this, right, mv dv plus v square dm. So now this is what I am going to again getting this. Okay, so equating both, I can get dk equal to dm c square. Are you getting the point here? Now this is what the kinetic energy. If the particle is accelerated from rest to a velocity v, then let's say suppose initial mass is m naught and its velocity, its mass increases to m. Imagine so. Then integrate that, integral over 0 to k dk is equal to c square into integral over m naught to m dm. How I can add on k equal to m minus m naught into upper limit minus lower limit, right? So m minus m naught into c square. Now multiply with this, k plus m naught c square equal to mc square. What we call this? m naught c square is already nothing but the energy associated with the rest mass. Already with the rest mass, this is the energy associated. So that plus kinetic energy will gives me the total energy, and thus E is equals to mc square. Are you getting the point here? Now from this, which is nothing but this E equal to mc square, gives us the relation between energy and with respect to the mass, which you can call it as the energy content of an object, which is equal to the mass times the square of the speed of the light. That's it, right? Now for 1 AMU, how we can write down this? As which is nothing but for if m equal to 1 AMU, which we consider, C is already there, then energy will be nothing but, so I am writing here for 1 AMU. What do you mean by 1 AMU here? 1 AMU is 1.6 into 10 power minus 27 kg is 1 AMU, right? If I substitute that here as E equal to mc square, C value already we know, it's almost we can call 3 into 10 power 8. Okay, if I substitute that, for that it is nearly 931 MeV, mega electron volt, if I consider that. So for 1 AMU, what we get it here? 931.5. It was nearly, so you 931 or 931.5, either way. So 1 AMU equal to 931.5 MeV by C square, or you can write down like this. It's not a deal. Are we clear with this? Okay, ma. Remember, I am speaking about energy is 931 MeV, and for 1 AMU is nothing but by C, no. So that's what 931.5 MeV by C square. Either way, so this is energies. Remember, with the notation of the units, with the units you have to be very careful. So 931 MeV is the energy which is associated with this. Are we clear with this? So when we consider one atomic mass unit, 1 AMU, this is the energy we can get. Clear? Right. Now let's look about the next one. Size of the nucleus. This is also one of the most important property of the nucleus, because this clearly tells us what a nucleus is actually. Because when you speak about the alpha ray scattering experiment, there we got the most of the rays are passing without any deviation. One very rarely alone we got the scattering. That's it, right? So which clearly states that at a very small region, a large amount of positive charge is being located, or you can call it as completely packed at that point. So we have to estimate that particular size rate, what it will be and all. So from the experimentals and all, we can get this relation whatever we are actually speaking about. So for that, we have to think in one more detailed manner, of course from the experimental alone, from all the experimental results, that like similar to an atom, which are very familiar, nucleus is not a solid object. Understand that it is never a solid object, and the surface is not will never having a well defined boundary also. But still we can assign the size of the nucleus, which means we cannot actually we can give a clear idea that from here to here or this much size, we cannot, but still we can give a clear picture. And of course from the scattering experiments it was very clear for you. And the volume of the nucleus is directly proportional to its mass number. Volume of the nucleus is directly proportional to the mass number. Look this very carefully. Volume of the nucleus is directly proportional to the mass number. Now I'll write down so that let's derive this so that it will be very clear. Just doing the same again. So how I can write down volume? It is, we are almost imagining this to be the 3-dimensional figure, right? So it will be nothing but 4/3 pi r cube is directly proportional to A, isn't it or not? Now what I can write down here, anyway it is constant, right? So R proportional to A power 1/3. What do you mean? Sorry, it's 1/3. R proportional to A power 1/3. What do you mean by this? What do you mean by this r proportional to a power 1 by 3? Which means radius of the nucleus, r refers to radius, right? Radius of the nucleus is proportional to cube root of its mass number. A is nothing but mass number, right? And now keeping all this, we can write down this to be as r equal to r naught a power 1 by 3. Here is the equation which I have already mentioned. Here it is. Can we write down? This is what the derivation part of. And well, look here, this r naught is nothing but a constant and will be in the order of range of the nuclear force, and will be in the order of the nucleon size also, average of that, and that was nothing but nuclear unit radius also you can call it as. And the r naught depends on nature of the probe particles. Probe particles refers to the target particles, what we are actually, alpha particles, right, there we have used. So here also the same, probe particles refers to that was for the purpose whatever the particles you are actually using to discuss. So r naught depends on that. And for electrons, remember for electrons r naught value is 1.2 Fermi, 1.2 Fermi meter, which is nothing but, so r naught is, I have already mentioned here, 1.2 Fermi meter is a constant which is the same for all the nuclei. And for the electrons you can give this to be as r naught equal to 1.2 Fermi meter. Okay, and if the other variable values are, which is nothing but, it will be in the order of 1.4 Fermi meter too. So 1.2, this is for electrons, right? So on a general, we can also have that r naught to be as 1.4 Fermi meter. This is also one more possible value. Are you getting the point here? Okay, right. Coming to the next one, nuclear density. What do you mean by the density first of all? What do you mean by density? Density is nothing but mass per unit volume. Mass per unit volume, which means the density of nuclear matter is the ratio of mass of a nucleus to its volume. Nuclear matter, understand that I am speaking about that mass. So as the volume of the nucleus is directly proportional to its mass number A, so density of nuclear matter is independent of size of the nucleus. Okay, therefore nuclear matter behaves like a liquid of constant density. Okay, different nuclei are like drops of this liquid of different sizes but of same density. You can call that to be better example like condition you can imagine, which means like suppose you have a liquid, density of liquid is rho L, I am calling it as. If I pour some liquid droplets on the floor of different sizes, their sizes are different. All the sizes of this liquid, the common point is these are all the droplets of the same liquid, but the density is same. Hope you got the point. So their sizes are different, but their density is same. In a very similar fashion, we can call like here also we can take the same example. That's it. No, the nuclear matter is also the same. Like nuclear matter is like the liquid having different nuclei are like different drops of the liquid. Okay, are we clear with this? So now keeping that in mind, if I consider the density, so mass of the nucleus, can I write down like this? AMU. A is nothing but mass number, because nucleus contains the nucleons, right? So that is what. Okay, because mass of each nucleon, if you consider that to be 1 AMU, almost nearly equal to 1 AMU, if you consider, then in the nucleus there will be a number of, A refers to, that is nothing but protons plus neutron. So A into 1 AMU. So A into, A is nothing but number, right? So A into 1.66 into 10 power minus 27 kg. Keep this aside. This is the total mass of the nucleus. Now what about the nuclear volume? 4/3 pi r cube. 4/3 pi, in the place of r I am going to substitute r naught A power 1 by 3. So r naught cube A. So substitute that 4 by 3 into pi is 22 by 7 into r naught 1.2 into 10 power minus 15 whole cube into A meter cube. This is all. 7.24 into 10 power minus 45 A meter cube. Now density is mass by volume. This divided by volume. What is the final result we got? It's 2.29 into 10 power 17 kg per meter cube. Look here, a very interesting value, most important too. Okay, right. Now what we can make a result of, or you can call it as a note. Okay, the nuclear density does not depend upon mass number. So all the nuclei possess nearly the same density, isn't it or not? In the, look here, this, do we got any concept of A here? So there is no concept of, so that's why it is completely independent of. Okay, the nuclear density has extremely large value. Such high densities are found in white dwarf stars, neutron stars, which contains many nuclear matter. So that kind of, which is nothing but the value what we got, isn't it or not? 2.29 or nearly 2.30 into 10 power 17 kg per meter cube. So very large value, which is nothing but. So I'll write down the value so that it will be clear for you. 2.30 into 10 power 17 kg per meter cube. Such a large value. Remember, this is density. Okay. Now the nuclear density is not uniform throughout the nucleus. It has maximum value at the center and decreases gradually as we move away from the center of the nucleus. Okay, the nuclear radius is the distance from the center of the nucleus at which the density of the nuclear matter decreases to 1/2 of its maximum value at its center. So for this, if you want, actually we can get this by considering the graph. If we plot a graph between taking distance from the center, which is nothing but r along x-axis, distance from center taking along x-axis, and this is nothing but the density, it's rho. If we consider this, the graph nature will be this, and remember this value where it is at what r becomes 0 means at the center its peak rho naught, and you can call the radius to be like the value where rho naught by 2, half of the max, this value is rho naught by 2, and this respective distance what we are actually on the x-axis is nothing but r. So the nuclear radius is the distance from the center of the nucleus at which the density of nuclear matter decreases to 1/2 of its maximum value at the center. Are we clear with this? So at that particular distance the density value falls to half of that. Are we clear with this now? Suppose if we want to speak about in terms of the area, radius, volume and all, let's say suppose let's speak in that sense. Let me erase this so that you can understand, which means for various parameters if we consider, so I am speaking about that, considering that if we can relate the radius, volume, surface area as well as the radius of the nucleus too. So that's what my intention is, will be very useful for solving the problems. So let's say suppose r is the radius, let's say r is the radius, s is the surface area, and v is the volume. Don't confuse here. So r is the radius, s is the surface area, v is the volume. You might have understand why I have not taken capital A to B, because capital A we are already having the mass number, so that's why I am replacing s with the surface area. Okay, now let's relate that as r proportional to a power 1 by 3. Now what I can write down here, r1 by r2 is equal to a1 by a2 whole to the power of 1 by 3, a1 by a2 whole to the power of 1 by 3. Can I write down? Now look here, what is the formula for surface area? S is nothing but 4 pi r square, isn't it or not? So S proportional to r square, and while r is proportional to a power 1 by 3, so r square will be proportional to a power 2 by 3. Can I write down? Now what I can write down from this, S1 by S2 is nothing but equal to A1 by A2 whole to the power of 2 by 3. Are you getting the point here? So surface area of the sphere, right, we are actually considering, so 4 pi r square. surface area is directly proportional to r square. We know that r proportional to a power 1 by 3. Square on that. So r square will be proportional to a power 2 by 3. That's what I have mentioned. S proportional to r square proportional to a power 2 by 3. So S1 by S2 is nothing but A1 by A2 whole to the power of 2 by 3. Don't confuse here. S1 is surface area. A is, what do you mean by A? Mass number. Right. Now coming to the next one, volume. Volume is proportional to r cube. Since because V is nothing but 4/3 pi r cube, isn't it or not? 4/3 pi r cube. So from that, what we can write down? V proportional to r cube. Now can I write down that as V proportional to r cube, which is nothing but A 1/3, no? So cube on both sides, it will be nothing but A. So V1 by V2 is nothing but A1 by A2. Are we clear with this? So final results, which are very important for us while solving the problems, a much needed result for us. So keep them in mind. R1 by R2 proportional to A1 by A2 whole to the power of 1 by 3. S1 by S2 equal to A1 by A2 whole to the power of 2 by 3. V1 by V2 equal to A1 by A2. Are we clear with this? Right. Let's look at the next one. Forces in the nucleus. So when you speak about the forces which are already existing inside the nucleus, I am speaking about. So these are all the most possible or the most common kind of. The first one is Coulombic repulsive forces. Second one is nuclear attractive force. Third one, hardcore repulsive force. Fourth one, tensor force. So out of all these, we have a very good discussion about the second one, which is nothing but this nuclear attractive forces. Regarding this, we will discuss separately. So let's start from the first one, Coulombic repulsive forces. When we'll have a Coulombic repulsive forces? Whenever we speak about the charged bodies. That's it, right? When we have point kind of the charges, and then we can have this Coulombic repulsive forces. Inside the nucleus, we can have both protons and neutrons. Isn't it or not? So between two neutrons, we can never have. Between proton and neutron also, we can never have. So this Coulombic repulsive forces is only between the proton and proton. So this is the electrostatic force of repulsion, which is nothing but this Coulombic repulsive force is the electrostatic force of repulsion between a proton and another proton. These forces are responsible for instability of nucleus. As atomic number increases, Coulombic repulsive forces increases and stability of the nucleus decreases. A best example I can give, carbon 612 is more stable than uranium 92 235. Very well known, regular kind of the examples I am considering. So carbon is more stable while this uranium 92 235 is unstable, isn't it or not? Are you getting the point here? And what is the reason? As atomic number is increasing more and more, obviously what do you mean by atomic number? Number of protons are actually increasing. So inside the nucleus, we are having only two kinds of the particles. One is proton, the another is neutron. So neutron, there is no possibility because it is chargeless. So the other way is the interaction with proton and the another proton, because between any two neutrons it is not possible. Between proton neutron also this is not possible. Only the possibility is only between the two protons, and this force is responsible for the instability, which is nothing but. Okay, right. Now let's look about the second one, which is nothing but nuclear attractive forces. Now let's understand that. What do you mean by this nuclear attractive forces? A very important one, which we have a continuation in the next also, right? The attractive force which holds the nucleons together in the nucleus is called nuclear force. So which attracts the nucleons. Let me write it just so that it, for Coulombic will be between P and P. Cause for instability. Cause for instability. Right. Coming to the next, this nuclear attractive force binds. Let me erase so that I'll write down properly. Nuclear forces are attractive forces which holds the nucleons together. Attractive anyway we have mentioned. So this force holds the nucleons. nucleons, isn't it or not? And this is an attractive force, as the nucleus contains protons and neutrons and is confined to a very small region, which will be in the order of 1 Fermi meter, 10 power minus 15 meter. And we are very well known that protons are positively charged particles and they repel each other when clustered together or when they come close together. So there should be some force that binds the nucleons together in the nucleus, and it is nothing but the nuclear force which we are actually speaking about. So getting the point here, right? So anyway, between the two protons there will be a force of repulsion. So in order to make the nucleus stable, this repulsive force should be dominated by some other, and that is what this nuclear attractive force we are actually speaking about. Okay, and remember, these nuclear forces are estimated to be nearly 100 times as strong as Coulomb force. So that's a very good sign, right? So when you compare with this particular Coulombic force, this is more than 100 times. So I'll write down here, nuclear forces are 100 times greater than Coulomb forces. So with this too. Okay, right. Now let's look about the third one, hardcore repulsive forces. So as we consider the distance to be a very small, right? So imagine if the distance between two nucleons becomes less than 0.5 Fermi meter. We are already speaking that the size of the nucleus will be in the order of Fermi meter. So which means if between any two nucleons, if the distance became 0.5 Fermi meter, 0.5 into 10 power minus 15 meter, there exists a force of repulsion instead of attraction in such situation, and these forces are called hardcore repulsive forces. And remember, these are very strong repulsive forces. These forces keep the volume or density of the nucleus constant. Due to these forces, the number of nucleons per unit volume remains constant in all nuclei. Hence, all nuclei have same density. So now this is the thing which is responsible for uniform density. So I want to make this as a note. So let me explain this once again. So when the distance between any two nucleons reduces to 0.5 meter, this particular kind, if the distance, then instead of an attraction there will be a repulsive force, and because of that repulsive force, the nucleus is having the volume and density of the nucleus is remaining constant. If not so, what happens when the nucleons come closer together? They will keep attracted to each other, and what happens if the number of nucleons are actually increasing? The size of the nucleus, as the number of nucleons are increasing, what happens to the size? It goes on decreases. Are you getting the point here? So inside the nucleus, if they come close to each other, they should repel each other. And at what distance this is? At nearly 0.5 Fermi meter. Understand that point. If not so, what happens if this hardcore repulsive forces are not there? What happens? Then each and every nucleon will be attracted with each other and they will be very tightly packed. What happens if they were tightly packed? The size of this nucleus shrinks. What happens when shrinks? So as density equal to mass by volume, mass is increasing, but volume, what happens? It doesn't happen. At the same time, simultaneously volume is decreasing. Are you getting the point here? Density variation occurs. But coming to the original context, almost all the nuclei are having a uniform density. So to make it so, that was the reason. So to make it so, even though the mass is increasing, subsequently the volume, whatever the repulsion it is actually, it will be maintained. Are you getting the point here? Right. Next one is tensor forces. All the nucleons will have spin. I am speaking about the protons as well as the neutrons too. So all the nucleons will have spin, positive spin, negative spin, clock, anti-clockwise, right? So they will behave like a magnetic dipoles. Anyway, in the quantum numbers, I think you might have you might be very familiar with this, basing on the spin, assigning the quantum numbers and all, spin quantum number and all. Okay, plus 1 by 2, minus 1 by 2. Do you remember, right? That's it. So there exists a force between the two dipoles. That's it, right? When we consider one particular in the orbitals, you will represent the electron like this, right? clockwise spin, anti-clockwise spin. So that's what. So each and every charge will behave, each and every particle will behave like a magnetic dipole, and there exists a force between the two dipoles. Remember, this is for the electron, just for the representation purpose only I have drawn this. Okay, and this force is called tensor force, whatever this dipole force between those two dipoles, magnetic dipoles. Remember, this is an attractive force. This is an attractive force, and this prevails up to the distance of 3 Fermi meter. So beyond the nucleus too, up to 3 Fermi meter, up to 3 Fermi meter. Okay, tensor forces will be because of the rotation of the nuclear dipoles, and later in the radioactivity we have a beta decay. Beta decay is because of only this tensor forces. Are we clear with this? The various kinds of the forces in the nucleus. So now let's discuss about this particular one and the properties, which is a most important one, nuclear attractive forces. Okay, right. Let's look about the properties. Nuclear forces are the strongest forces until now, which is nothing but if you go for the ratio, the relative strengths, like until now we have discussed about 3 kinds, right? Out of all, gravitational, Coulomb, and as well as the nuclear forces till now. So if you go for the ratio, let me mention the ratio: F gravitational, F electrostatic, F nuclear. Remember, this electrostatic is nothing but the coulombs. Okay, so will be in the order of 1:10⁻36:10⁻38. So such a large, such a strong. So nuclear forces are about very stronger than the gravitational forces. The relative strengths which you can notice here. And coming to the next one, these are short range forces. Obviously, the size of the nucleus itself is 1 Fermi meter, right? So the nuclear force between two nucleons will be negligible if the distance between them is greater than 2 Fermi meter. So until the boundary of the nucleus alone, we can have this particular nuclear force. Okay, so which is a very different property like what we have expected in the earlier cases, which means in the case of gravitational or in the case of electromagnetic, we have extended up to the infinity, right? Do you remember, at the infinity also we can, whether it will be, but this is just after crossing a 1.5 Fermi meter or just beyond the boundary of that, this force is getting vanished. Thus nuclear force is a short range force which exists only within that particular nucleus. Coming to the next one, strong attractive forces. So these forces are at that particular range, which is nothing but in the size of the nucleons. These forces are very strong in nature and they are very attractive because they make the nucleus to be stable by holding them together. That's it, right? The mutual repulsion between the protons should be balanced by. So this nuclear force will bound the nucleons to this particular entire nucleus. So it makes them to be. Thus they are strong, attractive in nature. Coming to the next one, saturated forces. What do you mean by saturated forces? This is nothing but a nucleon inside the nucleus does not experience nuclear force due to all the other nucleons. It experiences force only due to its nearest neighboring nucleon. Are you getting the point here? So let me draw a figure so it will be very clear. Imagine here is a nucleon. Combining all, I am considering a nucleon. Imagine here is in one more nucleon, one more, like this, many of inside. This particular nucleon will be having the immediate effect, or you can call it as the nuclear force, only because of this neighboring, while all these remaining which are very far away, they do not contribute any. Such a kind of forces are nothing but saturated forces. So let me repeat that. A nucleon inside the nucleus does not experience nuclear force due to all the other nucleons. It experiences force only due to its nearest neighboring nucleons. So only by the nearby alone it will get, not by the very other far away. Clear? Such a forces are nothing but, property is nothing but saturation, and that's what we call it as nuclear forces are saturated forces. Nuclear forces are, next one, coming to that, nuclear forces are charge independent. So the nuclear forces doesn't depends upon, which means inside that nucleus, the attractive forces will be between the, what are the possibilities? Between neutron and proton, between two neutrons, between two protons. Okay, but by the experimental facts, all these three kinds, which is nothing but force between neutron proton, force between neutron neutron, force between proton proton, all these three pairs are having the same magnitude, almost equivalent in magnitude they are all, and that's what the reason why we can say that inside the nucleus the force between the nucleons is not affected by charge of the proton, and of course this property is known as charge independence of nuclear force. Okay, coming to the next one, spin dependent. Nuclear forces are spin dependent. The force between two nucleons having parallel spins is greater than the force between the two nucleons having anti-parallel spins. So let me write down, force between two nucleons having parallel spins is greater than force between the two nucleons having anti-parallel, or let me write down the symbol, it will be easy for you to remember. Anti-parallel, just crossing the parallel symbol, anti-parallel spins. So force between the nucleons which are having parallel spins is greater than always force between the nucleons which are having anti-parallel spins, and such a situation is nothing but, or that condition is nothing but, nuclear forces are spin dependent. Are we clear with this? Okay, coming to the next one, exchange forces. And of course this kind of depending on the spin or nothing but we have already discussed what we call this. These forces are nothing but tensor forces. We have already seen right earlier. So the same here also inside the nucleus. So this kind of the forces which depends on the spin of the particular particles are nothing but tensor forces. Okay, right, coming to the next one, exchange forces. Actually we have a discussion about this. Let me explain this in brief, and again at the end I will speak about this exchange forces. So nuclear forces between any two nucleons will be because of the exchange of the pi mesons, we can call it as pions or pi mesons, quarks, and these pi mesons are of three kinds: pi neutral, pi positive, pi negative. Okay, and because of the exchange of this pi mesons, the nuclear forces are being existing inside that particular. So nuclear forces are exchange force. At the end I will tell you what do you mean by this exchange and all. So let me first finish this. Okay, right, coming to the last one which is important, non-central forces. Central forces are distance dependent, right? So while these are not like that, the force which depends only on the magnitude of the separation of the particles is known as central force. That's very well known thing, isn't it or not? Earlier also we have seen many. But the force between the two nucleons does not solely depend on the distance between them, and it does not act along the line joining the two nucleons. Hence the nuclear force is not completely central. So we can clearly say that neither it depends upon that particular distance, magnitude of the distance, or what we can say that it doesn't act along the line joining them. If it acts so, then we could have called it, but it is not at all, and that's what the reason here we are not actually speaking about. Okay, coming to this exchange forces, actually have you ever listened about the scientist name called Yukawa? Recently of course he has been awarded the Nobel too, Yukawa potentials. Okay, a very few years back. So we are speaking about that. Actually coming to the nuclear physics, nuclear at that particular level, there will be always daily a different development of the topic from the different ends, because this is all the theoretical development of the topic alone. Coming to the actual content, we have never seen the elementary particles, which are nothing but, actually we are now speaking about electron, proton, neutron, all these are practically which we have already proved, but beyond them many of the elementary particles have been introduced, and they are called quarks, Quarks, QUARKS. I'll write down here. QUARKS, quarks. But there is no actual proof for all this kind of. They cannot be realized. Just like how we can create bring out an electron, we can bring out a neutron, or we can take out a proton. That will be. But these quarks cannot be realized like how we have done all this. Are we getting the point here? Okay. So basing on the Yukawa's theory, we can say that the nuclear force which binds the protons and neutrons together inside a nucleus is not a true fundamental force of nature, according to him. Okay, the nucleons themselves are built of subunits called quarks, which I told you already. So these nucleons are actually made up of these quarks, and there are many kinds. Later at the end, I will tell you all this. Okay, thus nuclear force is a secondary effect of the strong force which binds the quarks together to form the neutrons and protons. This quark force will be caused by the exchange of the massless particles called gluons, and of course these are nothing but all the different kinds of. So the actual existence of all these kind of are actually we cannot realize. Keep that in mind. So what he stated is, suppose a neutron, whatever we are actually speaking, can never be like a neutron, and by releasing some other particle it can be converted into the proton, and as well as the proton, whatever we are actually speaking, can never exist as like a proton, and at any point it may release this one of the pi meson and it will be converted into the neutron, or vice versa condition of. So will be very confusing actually for you. So for at this particular point of your level of knowledge, so for your better understanding, I can say that let's say suppose if I consider neutron, you can write down this to be like a proton. Let me erase that so that I will write down from the beginning. It will be clear for you. So coming to the exchange forces, I have mentioned here. Look here. So this is what. So when a neutron, whatever you are actually speaking about, it will never stay like a neutron, because there will be an exchange of the particles, and that particle we are speaking like pi mesons. Do you remember it? And there are three kinds: pi negative, pi positive, pi zero, which I have already mentioned earlier. Pi zero. All these are the three different kinds of zero. So now a neutron will be converted into a proton by giving out a negative pi meson. Similarly, when a negative pi meson combines with a proton, gives us neutron, vice versa condition. Similarly, a proton will be converted into a neutron by giving out a pi positive meson, and similarly when a pi positive meson combines with a neutron, gives us proton. And look here, these two conversions, when proton combines with a pi zero meson, it gives us proton, respectively the neutron too. So now are we clear with this? The neutron, whatever we are actually speaking, will never be like a pure neutron, or the proton, what we are actually speaking, is not a pure proton. So the actual point is, when we speak about that in the sense of the elementary particle classification, this confusion or whatever the higher level of the thing what we are actually speaking about will exist. So simply to say, the Yukawa potential states, according to the scientist Yukawa, the nucleus consists of this kind of core, the pi mesons core, which is nothing but. So this emission of pion by a nucleon, either it can be because of a neutron or because of the proton, which we are actually seeing here. So this emission, whatever will be of the pion, this is will be no change in its mass in a violation of the law of conservation of mass and energy. So that's why I told massless. Okay, so this is no change in it of its mass, and of course there will be no violation of law of conservation of mass and energy too. And but this violation is allowed only temporarily, because this nucleon reabsorbs the same or another pion available, so on. So whatever this is a very momentarily kind of. Okay, so in a very next fraction of second, again they combine, they will come back to this. Similarly, again they will combine and they will come back to this. So all these conversions are very will happen in a very fraction of seconds and off. And you don't have all this in your theoretical part, no need to worry about this, but just for your knowledge I am speaking about, because we got the concept of exchange force, right? So that's why I have introduced all this. Very higher level for your level of knowledge, but just for to increase your knowledge level, I am just stating all this. I am giving the info for you. Okay, no need to worry about all this. This is not in your kind of the syllabus. This explanation, Yukawa potentials or Yukawa theory and all, you don't have in your syllabus. No need to worry about that.